Hey, weirdos, I'm Ash.
And I'm Elena.
And this is Morbid.
This is Morbid, and oh boy, is it a doozy that I have for you today.
You always get this certain look in your eyes when you're about to really fuck me up.
This story just, I have...
Oh, even Mikey is making a face. He's like, ah.
Oh, Dave, when we were talking about it, was like, why is this not its own, like, movie series? Like, it's a wild tale.
Oh, no.
There's so much to it.
I'm nervous.
And, like, a lot of mystery, but it's just really, really intense. So,
Okay.
you know, I think you need to buckle up for it, but...
Hold on to your butts.
Hold on to those butts. But before we get into it, I just want to say we got to go on stage with Pod Meets Worlds.
It was the coolest thing I think we've ever gotten to do.
We got to hang out with Topanga, Eric, and Sean from Boy
And
Meets Worlds.
Harley.
And fucking Harley Kiner.
And they are just the nicest people.
I'm telling you, you know that whole thing? We say it all the time. We're like, oh, you always get scared. You're like, don't meet your heroes. Don't do it because they can disappoint you. And
No,
like,
meet your heroes.
I'm just always scared because I'm like, I just really hope this doesn't like, you know.
just like blow up in our
I'm
face.
telling you guys. It's Danielle Fishel, Will Friedle, Ryder Strong, and Danny McNulty as Harley Kiner. And I'm telling you, they were the sweetest people.
Truly.
I'm 37 years old. You guys know how many times I reference like Sabrina the Teenage Witch and Boy Meets World.
It's always those two.
Yeah, it's always those that just like I go right back to because they were literally my adolescence. And walking into a room and seeing
Just the squad.
Sean Hunter, Topanga, and Eric
Yeah.
just sitting there.
You acted cool.
Thank you for saying
You
that
kept
because
your cool.
inside of my body was a fright.
See, I
It
know
was a
that because I
fright.
know you, but like if you didn't know you, I don't think you could tell. Also, they all give a really good handshake.
They do. They give a strong handshake
Papa
and they look
always-
you in the eye.
Yes, Papa
Yeah.
always taught me you give a strong handshake because nobody likes a little fishy
Nobody
limp
likes a
handshake.
little sloppy fish
I was
handshake.
so impressed by all their handshakes.
Yeah. They're just really kind people. They're hilarious.
So funny.
Very like welcoming. It was a lot of fun.
It was.
Sitting on a couch next to Eric, I was like,
Just unreal.
what the fuck happened here? So
Will
also,
invited us to ice cream.
He did. I'm still not over any
And
of
we're
this.
going.
And we're going.
And Will, if you're walking Sammy,
Oh, hey. And also hey to your wife, Sue,
Oh,
because
Sue.
she
We
was
love
awesome.
Sue.
She was so sweet. But
Sue had swag too. I loved her outfit.
yeah, they were great. And it's like, and so this is all also to say, like, the only reason we are able to do this stuff is because you guys listen to this show.
Which is still wild. Thanks for that.
Thank you a lot. Because, like, that was a really cool experience.
Weirdos making dreams
And
come
I only
true.
had it because of you guys. So appreciate.
Should we tell them how it made us feel on stage?
It made us feel some type of way.
It made us feel like maybe we wanted to do a show.
Like a hometown show.
A hometown show, not a tour.
Yeah, I was going to say.
We will not tour. I'm about to be a wedded woman. And you have like 70 kids.
I have 3, but it's similar.
Honestly,
It feels like 70.
3 kids and 2 dogs equates to
Yes.
70 children.
You know what? Correct.
It does.
Yes, you were right the first time.
Trust me, I've been here.
But yeah, I think we want to do a hometown show.
We got the bug.
Next year, so we'll keep you guys updated on that.
Yeah,
So
definitely next year at some
It
point.
was just really fun
I have to sneeze.
to go out there.
I wanted to warn you.
I appreciate that. I have to sneeze. Yeah, it was just really fun. But thanks to Pod Meets Worlds.
Yeah.
Thanks to all of them, and thanks to you guys. And
Thanks to everybody.
that was an awesome experience. And again, you guys are the best.
You guys
So
are
now,
the tits.
I'm gonna ruin your life with this story. So I'm
That's
sorry
Yeah.
that I'm taking you here.
You should get a shirt that says that. I'm going to ruin your life with this story, so I'm sorry. Because the amount of times you've said that to me in my life,
So
even
true.
about like things that we don't talk about on the show, you're like, I got a story that's going to ruin your life.
Or I'm like, I have a fact that's gonna, and if I have to know it, you have to know it now. Like I do that to John daily.
Did I ever tell you guys about the time that Elena looked at me and she goes, the sun could have exploded 8 minutes ago and we wouldn't know?
Yeah.
If the sun explodes, we won't know for 8 minutes.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be alone in knowing that.
No, now you all know that.
Love you. But anyway.
You're also going to have to know about the horrific case of Ocey Snead.
Okay.
This is an older one, but I promise you it's not lacking in drama.
Okay.
So the death of Ocey Snead in East Orange, New Jersey. What's up, New Jersey? It was an undeniable tragedy, but her death was really only the beginning of what would become one of the early 20th century's truly most captivating crime stories.
Oh, man.
Like, it's pulled directly out of the pages of some kind of like classic Southern Gothic horror novel. Got a lot of elements. And like any good Gothic horror story, the trial that followed was also full of unbelievable twists and ended up culminating in a pretty shocking conclusion.
Really?
Yeah.
I feel like we've had a few cases where there's been like gnarly trials lately.
Yeah.
Right?
Usually, a lot of times the older cases have some wily trials.
Yeah, because I feel like different things were admissible
Yeah.
back then, and like they tried to get away with different kinds of fuck shit.
Exactly. And they had to change laws and shit.
Yeah.
All right. So let's first begin with Ocey. Who is Ocey Snead?
Tell me.
Now, like many aspects of this story, Ocey's date of birth and several other, details about her are kind of shrouded in a little bit of mystery.
The 1900s of it all.
Yeah, she was born in New York, in September of 1885. I don't know exactly what date it was. We couldn't find one.
Potentially a Virgo.
Exactly. We couldn't find one that we felt comfortable being like, this is definitely her birthday. Her name was Oceana Wardlaw Martin.
That's a really pretty name.
I know, Oceana.
Yeah, that's gorge.
She was the daughter of Caroline Wardlaw and Colonel Robert Maxwell Martin, who was a very celebrated Confederate veteran of the American Civil War. Now, from the perspective of his Confederate peers, got to be clear about that.
Let's be clear.
Robert Martin was a war hero.
Oh.
Again, remember, perspective is everything. He served in many key battles in the war. He was severely wounded while saving the life of General John Hunt Morgan, but managed to survive and went on to lead the Confederate plot to burn New York City.
Oh.
Fun. When their attempt to burn New York City ultimately failed.
Yeah, it didn't work out.
Because I don't know if you guys know it, but New York City's still there.
Still standing.
He led an unsuccessful attempt to kidnap Vice President Andrew Johnson.
Wow.
He, for that, was eventually captured and imprisoned, and he was released from prison when the war ended and moved back to the South, where he made and lost a fortune in the tobacco industry. Real interesting fella, this one.
I guess so.
Now, it was during this post-war period that he met and married Caroline Wardlaw. Now, Robert still had a fortune. Like, he ended up, he was never in dire straits here. And Robert supervised the construction of a large mansion in Wilder Park, Kentucky. In the early 1880s, tragedy struck because the family mansion burned to the ground under suspicious circumstances.
That's ironic.
Yeah, I know. The couple lived for a short amount of time in a much smaller house on the grounds of the mansion, but that quickly became a little unsustainable following the birth of the couple's first child.
Okay.
So Robert relocated the family to New York City, and Caroline gave birth to Oceana, in the fall of 1885.
What a weird thing to like go live in the city that you plan to burn down.
Yeah, it's a little strange.
Yeah, that is.
A little strange. There was a brief period of success and calm for the family until about 1900, when tragedy struck again.
Oh, no.
That's when Robert's son died from brain fever, encephalitis. That's what they used to call encephalitis. He died after, so he had encephalitis, and that's what he died from, but it was after a particularly bad fall down the stairs in their home in New York.
Do you think that could have had something to do with it?
People don't know what happened there.
Okay. Can you also remind me what encephalitis is, please?
It's like inflammation of the brain.
Oh, okay.
So that's why they call it brain fever.
Gotcha.
Like the fire that destroyed the family home in Kentucky before, the circumstances under which, the Robert's son died were somewhat suspicious.
Okay. I'm catching on to a theme here, if you will.
What's more suspicious was the speed at which his father collected a payout from the $22,000 life insurance policy.
Damn. And that's $22,000.
It was also when they could use money.
Mm-hmm.
They could have used money.
Like it came in interesting timing.
Yeah, which it seems like insurance policies in this story they just come at the right time.
Dude, insurance policies,
they're always on time.
They freak me out.
Now, that $22,000 life insurance policy now would be $700,000.
Holy shit.
So, sizable.
Yeah. I mean, even just $22,000 is sizable.
But like $700,000.
That's on another level, baby.
And it's like, so there's a lot there. Now, despite this, and it all just went to plan, despite this, the insurance payout allowed the family to move to a much nicer home on Fifth Avenue, actually.
Imagine that. Oh, Fifth Avenue.
Silver linings, I guess.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the excitement of the new home wouldn't last long.
Before tragedy struck again?
Because only a few months after moving in, neighbors heard a commotion coming from the Martin house, and they ran over to see what was happening and found Robert had suffered a paralytic stroke and was being attended by a rather stern-looking Caroline, his wife.
Okay.
Who immediately told her hysterical daughter, Ocey, not to speak.
Okay, so was that like a stroke or was that something else?
You can't see me, but I'm shrugging.
She's the shrug emoji.
I don't know. Robert did hold on for a little while and ended up living for a short period of time in very bad health, and then finally ended up succumbing and dying on January 12th, 1901.
It's just weird that she told her daughter not to say anything, because, like, what would she have to say if he was just having a stroke?
What would she have to say? I wonder.
Me as
now,
well.
Following Robert's death, Caroline packed up her daughter and moved them both back to her hometown of Murfreesboro, Tennessee.
Okay.
That's where Caroline's sister Virginia was actually in charge of the Murfreesboro Soul Female College, where Caroline's other sister, she had two sisters, Mary, was a member of the faculty.
Cool.
So Virginia is the president of the school. Mary is part of the faculty. Caroline hadn't let them know that she was coming, but they took her in right away, and they found her a job as the school's new bookkeeper. So they're all working at this school together. Now, it seems by all accounts that Virginia and Mary's existence at the school before this were fairly normal. Soul Female College was touted as providing, quote, a traditional Southern education for women in cultural studies and social grace.
Ooh, social grace.
Now, Virginia was named president of the school in 1892, and the school really thrived under her leadership and became very highly acclaimed. She was well respected. She ran the program with discipline, with honor. According to all who knew her at the time, she was brought into this position because of the respect people had for her.
Wow.
Now, Virginia had spent her adult life as what people called a spinster and focused on her responsibilities at the school. That was what she really focused on.
AKA a boss bitch.
Yeah.
For now.
I was just going to say.
I don't know anything else. I don't know what happens.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
I retract
I
this
get
statement.
It. And Mary had raised two sons, and when they had grown and married, she joined the faculty at school. So everybody seemed like they had, taken a good path.
Okay.
Again, seemed to be killing it. Then Caroline arrives.
Okay. Caroline seems to be the issue here.
The arrival of Caroline was like a weird reset button, and no one really understood why. Like, again, everything seemed to be going pretty chill. People said the sisters, like Mary and Virginia, could be like, I just said Virginia.
You did.
I didn't mean to say that.
Virginia.
Virginia. They were like a little strange. But like,
okay,
but relatively, they weren't like problematic or anything, they were just living, existing.
Okay.
But Mary and Virginia completely changed when Caroline showed up. The three sisters began dressing in all black together.
What?
And wearing heavy black veils all the time.
What the fuck?
Just out of nowhere.
All of a sudden, we're like,
yep.
Coven.
Like, she showed up and they were just like, boom. Literally, like AHS Coven,
witch?
Straight
like,
up.
The fuck?
And people were curious about this.
One might be.
More curious, though, was the very marked change in their behavior. They were once known to keep very ordinary schedules. They were, a president of a female college and a part of the faculty, after all. It's not like they were doing these crazy things.
Yeah.
But the sisters now had a habit of going out very late at night, in the middle of the night, and more disturbingly began entering students' homes or rooms as they slept to just stand and stare at them.
No, shut the fuck up.
I'm
Why?
not kidding.
This is not real.
This is real.
What the fuck?
They would literally break into students' rooms while they were sleeping and stand and stare at them.
For why?
I do not know.
What the fuck?
There's some weird cult thing happening here.
Something's going on.
Because they also hired a driver to drop them off at Evergreen Cemetery every evening, where they were said to carry on with strange rituals and chanting.
Honestly, fucking metal as fuck if you take the B&E out of it.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I said. I was like, up to this point, like, take the B&E out of it. And I'm like, go off, queens.
Like, this is cool,
but man, do they take it somewhere.
Oh, God.
And people saw them dancing around graves and all manner of odd behavior and just like, they would, I mean, later you'll see like the behavior gets even stranger. They would like move people out of classrooms and into other classrooms and move them back, and like, they were just being weird. Like,
and
just
it's
strange.
never explained why they did this?
No.
What?
Well, and the thing is, in 1904, the obvious and very dramatic and strange change in Mary and Virginia's behavior was very unsettling to the students of Seoul Female College, who had known them forever.
Right, as like pretty peeps.
Normal and very disciplined and like, you know, respectful people.
Yeah.
And one account said frightened students started to leave the school, and it wasn't long before the school was in chaos, and the Black Sisters, as they were known to be called, were asked to leave.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I do understand
Because
why
they
were
lost
asked to
money.
leave.
The school was losing money left and right. Students were literally leaving the school because of their behavior.
They're waking up in the middle of the night to these three cuckoo nut ladies at the foot of their bed.
They're being B&E'd by the Supreme Witch and her coven in the middle of the night. Like, that's a lot to handle. There were also rumors that Caroline was maybe pocketing some money from the school.
Okay.
Allegedly.
Now,
fortunately, no, she is not. Now, fortunately, the sister's great aunt, Oceana Pollock, who
the baby was named after,
needed help at Montgomery Female College in Virginia.
Okay.
So she looked at this whole, like, them leaving in disgrace thing as like,
it's fine.
So she invited them all to join her.
She's like, you're just kooky.
Yeah, it's okay. They just don't get you. I love how chic you are. Now, when Virginia came to run the program, it was like she fell back into her old ways. Her old ways of teaching, her old ways of running things. Everything was great. Virginia was back. She was like, oh, I know I'm kooky, but like, I'm back.
Okay.
And it felt like, okay, the school was a boarding school, and one program described it as the remarkable purity and healthfulness of the atmosphere render the location peculiarly eligible for a seat of learning.
Hot.
So I guess it's a great place to learn.
It sounds great.
But Mary came after Virginia. She joined the faculty, and everything was still okay. They seemed to fall back into their old thing.
Seems like Caroline's the common denominator here.
Then Caroline joins.
I'm sorry, all I can think of is the Outcast song, Caroline.
Caroline! That's literally, like, she joins, and it's like, oh, shit.
Like, fuck.
And the thing is, Caroline joined with Ocey, her daughter.
Okay.
And things fucked up again. What power did this woman have over her sisters? I don't know.
She is the supreme.
I think she might be, because apparently Caroline was in charge of administration. She was put right in charge of administration.
That's a thought.
And she messed with the curriculum immediately. And this is when she began the strange behavior of like moving students from classroom to classroom, like during the day.
For no reason.
Like, just ripping them out of a classroom, putting them in another, then moving them back. Like, she was just doing weird stuff. And she would put like several padlocks on random doors.
What?
So it made people like very unnerved and like unsettled, because they're like, what the fuck's behind that door? And like, why are there 3 padlocks on it?
What the fuck?
And then they were doing the same peekaboo routine with the sisters in the residence halls.
They're breaking in?
Yeah, like doing the same, like, woo, I'm just looking in on you.
What?
Like, what the fuck, ladies?
Why? I hate
so everybody
it.
just fell back into the old, like, strange shit.
I need an answer.
You won't get one.
I require one.
I also kind of required one, but I wasn't given one.
Like, why the fuck did, like,
history will not give me an
God
answer.
damn.
Caroline is Ocey's mom, Mary and Virginia's sister. She's the problem.
Gotcha.
It's her. She's the problem.
She's the problem.
It's
It's Caroline.
So Caroline ended up visiting Mary's son, John Snead.
Okay.
Who was her nephew.
Oh, the look in your eye tells me we in danger. Oh, God, I'm so upset. Your weird face right now. I'm so nervous.
Reports say she, quote unquote, caused trouble and, quote unquote, interfered in John's marriage.
That just means that she didn't like his wife and she said, get out of here, right? Totally. Nothing else happened, right?
What happened here?
I don't know.
What does it mean? What does it mean?
What does it mean?
There are even reports that John told the neighbors, and I quote, that he wouldn't let her wreck his home.
Okay.
I don't know if you've ever heard of the term home wrecker.
I sure have.
I'm sorry, what?
Oh, no.
There's a lot of, when you read about this particular time in this story, nothing's outwardly said. But it's all said.
Well, because they didn't say shit like that
it's
back
there.
then.
She was there.
So was she trying to wreck the home and he wouldn't let her?
So while she was interfering, and while she was interfering and not wrecking her nephew's home, gross.
Yes, yep.
She was trying to convince him to come teach at Montgomery Female College in Virginia with all of them and leave his wife.
Uh-huh.
And he refused at first. He was like, "No.
Yep.
I'm not going to run away with my aunt.
Stop. I don't like
I'm not going to do that." But she returned a couple of weeks later and interfered again.
Uh-huh.
And this time her interference convinced him to leave his fucking wife, Anna.
She read a Cosmo article.
Come with her. And he did. He came with her and left Anna, just abandoned her.
You know what? Anna was better off.
Yeah, apparently Anna had struggled though, I guess. Like she had some
I would
really did a number
too if my man's left me for his aunt.
Yeah, it really did a number. So curiously though, John became seriously injured on the way back to Virginia.
Oh no.
He fell or was pushed.
That's strange.
From the train as it approached Roanoke.
Oh, Roanoke.
He survived, but weeks later he was found almost drowned in a cistern on the school's campus.
Why is he having so
by
many
his Aunt
accidents?
Virginia. And his Aunt Virginia was like, "Oh, don't worry, he was checking the water supply for the school. Oops, don't worry that he fell in there and the lid went over and I'm the one who found him."
Yeah, don't worry about that.
He managed to survive that.
How does Mary feel about all this? Isn't that her kid?
I don't think any of them are Mother of the Year, I would say.
Okay.
But he managed to survive that. And then 1 week later, he was found on fire in his bed.
What the fuck is happening here?
This man was on fire in his bed. He was doused with kerosene.
Oh my God.
But they claimed it was an accident. And who found him? Who found him?
Caroline, of course.
Was his aunts, of course.
How do you accidentally douse someone in kerosene? You don't.
Yeah.
Where are we?
Where are we is correct.
I
don't know.
I've quite literally never heard a tale such as this.
This
is for reals.
This is for
this
real.
This is not legend.
There's newspapers to back this up. There's trials to back this up. I would also like to put this out here. I had never heard of this case. And then one Mikey.
You found this?
Was the one to bring this up. And I said, holy shit.
Yeah, where the fuck did you find this?
In the depths of hell.
I was going to say, he said in hell.
In hell.
In Hades. What the fuck?
It is a tale that just keeps you guessing till the very end.
But I want answers. I need concrete answers.
And unfortunately, in the beginning, it's like wild and kooky and like it starts getting really dark and then it gets dark at the end. So it's like, in the beginning, you're like, what is happening? And then at the end, you're like, what the fuck happened? Like, you're just like, oh, God.
Keep going.
So, yeah. So, keep going.
Keep going.
So, his aunts are the one who called that in. Now, remember, he fell from a train approaching Roanoke that Caroline was on.
Weird.
He almost drowned in a cistern on campus where Virginia found him.
Coincidence.
And then he was lit on fire with kerosene in his bed. And his
Caroline
aunts were the
found
ones
him.
who found him. Like Virginia and Caroline.
Interesting that Mary's never around.
Mary's just like, whoopsie. Now, following his death, the sisters, all three of them, collected an insurance payout.
Those bitches love insurance.
Which they had taken out. So, strange. Now, in 1906, around the time of John Snead's unexpected and very tragic death.
Because he died after the fire, obviously.
He sure did. Caroline paid a visit to his brother, Fletcher, her other nephew.
Stop. I love the name Fletcher.
He was still living in Tennessee.
He should stay there.
This is Mary's other son, her other nephew. Caroline explained that there would be some family property near Chattanooga that needed looking after and asked whether Fletcher would be willing to pay a visit to the property.
Okay.
But Fletcher's wife was like,
I heard about you.
well, and she was like, okay. But she was like, you can go, but like, I want to make sure we're in constant contact.
Yeah, because I heard about this girl.
Because I heard about what's happening here. So
about Auntie over here.
She attempted to contact him on the phone a few weeks later, and Caroline answered and told her, no, he can't come to the phone right now. And she was like, what the fuck do you mean he can't come to the phone right now? And she was like,
he died.
He's sick. And she was like, well, I want to talk to him. And she was like, too sick to talk. And she was like, the fuck do you mean too sick to talk? And she was like, I don't know, bitch. And then she hung up the phone.
That's quotes.
Literally like the transcript. So she was like, I don't know about that. So she contacts again and she's like, how's he doing? Can I talk to him? And she's like,
nah,
still can't talk to him. Still too sick. And then she's like, you know what? I'll send him home in a few weeks when he's better.
A few weeks?
So in a few weeks had come and gone with no word from Fletcher.
Call the police.
Fletcher's wife set out for Chattanooga and was like,
I'm coming.
I'm coming for you, baby.
Oh my God.
Now, when she arrived at the boarding house that he had supposedly been staying at,
quote unquote,
the woman there was told her that Fletcher had indeed been there. Oh my God. But then he had been moved to another house by Caroline.
Caroline loves moving people places.
Moved her to another house. So Fletcher's wife follows. She fucking Sherlock Holmes it.
Good for this girly.
She Detective Aberlines this.
Love it.
Like she follows Caroline's trail, always a few steps behind, but following her. She's like, I'm going to find my husband. But eventually she ran out of leads.
No.
And she couldn't find him. Without any information regarding her husband's whereabouts and seemingly no fucking way to find him, and he didn't exist anymore, she was granted a divorce because she was like, he abandoned me.
She didn't involve the police.
I guess she was like, there's nothing to really, because she was just like, I guess Caroline later was just like, yeah, he just left.
What?
And it's like, no, he didn't.
What?
No, he did not.
Why is Caroline like this?
I do not know. But she couldn't find him because he was already on his way to rejoin the sisters in Virginia with Caroline.
He fell in love with Auntie?
I don't know. I don't know what's happening there.
I'm so deeply upset by this.
But she was convincing him. Now, once there, Caroline began encouraging a romance between Fletcher and Ocey.
Cousins.
Her daughter.
Cousins?
They are first cousins.
Oh, that's heinous. That's illegal in many, many places.
So let me just back it up.
Go ahead.
She goes after interfering in her first nephew's marriage, convincing him, bamboozling him into following her.
Bamboozling.
She tries to kill him twice.
Fuck.
And then eventually they succeed and light him on fire in his bed. Collect that insurance payment. She goes to the other nephew, Mary's other son. Mary's just letting this all happen.
That's the thing. I'm like, Mary, how many sons you got?
Goes to her other son, convinces him to come back to the Virginia with her.
Yeah.
Then ices out his wife, pretends that Fletcher just up and was sick, first of all, too sick to talk, and then just abandoned her, and who knows where he went. And instead, she takes Fletcher back to the school in Virginia with her and then encourages Ocey and Fletcher to get married, first cousins.
And it seems as though like there was already something romantic happening between Caroline and Fletcher.
There's something weird happening there.
What?
I don't know what. Like, I don't know. I wasn't there.
This is real. This is real life. You know in Bluey when they go, for real life.
For real life.
That's how I feel right
I felt that the entire time I read this story. I said, for real life. Every 5 seconds.
Like,
and it is for real life.
Fuck?
Like, we need the Bluey clip that says for real life.
Do your kids have a toy that says it?
They
go
do.
find it.
For real life. That's happening. So now she's encouraging Ocey and Fletcher to get married. She's like, first cousins, I never heard of them. So before long, the two, Fletcher and Ocey, were married in a secret ceremony because they had to make it secret.
That's not
They were in
legal.
Christiansburg, Virginia. They had to make it secret because they are first cousins.
Is there even anywhere that you can marry your first cousin?
Not sure, but I don't want to go.
I'm not going
wherever
there.
it is.
Remember that True Life?
Yes.
Oh my God. Anyways.
It's very upsetting.
It
No.
is.
People were already suspicious of this trio of wild women.
This trio of incest.
Of wily women. And so when this happened, they had to do it in secret because it was just really gonna, and who knows, I'm like, what was your end game here? But when they first arrived at the Montgomery Female College, things at the school, like I said, had seemed stable and well managed.
Yeah, they were fine.
But just as it had been at Sewell Family College, it didn't take long for Caroline's influence to cause even more problems.
Well, because they're still going into the rooms and like doing the weird shit,
all the things,
padlocking the doors.
Not long after they arrived, rumors began spreading around town about like their weird behavior, about them holding midnight rituals in the cemeteries around.
Fuck.
I mean, there were like rumors about like a quote unquote illegitimate baby that was born at the school that disappeared. What? And they believed like something might have happened. That those are rumors, but like these are the things people were talking about.
This is one of those things where it's like, all the rumors are true.
It's really scary.
Oh my God.
Within 2 years of their arriving there and all this crazy, strange behavior, the sisters again had started to frighten students.
Yeah, I would be frightened.
Students were dropping out again because they were like, "I'm not going to this. Like, this is too wild for me."
Fuck this school.
And by 1908, the school had to close.
They had to close?
They had to close.
Why didn't anybody intervene before that?
I do not know.
Damn.
But having once again found themselves in dire financial straits,
they had to kill someone.
Yeah, the sisters, well, first they tried to sell off the school's minor assets.
Okay.
Like 5 pianos, a church organ, rosewood wardrobes.
Can make a lot of money
and the
off of that.
school itself.
Do they
Here's
even own
the thing. There's no evidence to indicate that they had any ownership.
What the fuck?
Or the property.
Yes, just sell it. They're like, do you have the deed? They're like, fuck that.
They were like, hey, you want this building?
Oh my God. Who are these women? Who raised these women? Are these Lucifer's children?
I think it's like a confidence thing. If you just walk up to a building and you're like, hey, you want this?
They hired a real estate agent and everything. It comes time to sign the paperwork. They're like, what paperwork?
They're like, what the fuck?
Take the building.
Take the building.
Give us the money.
Give me the check. Take the building. Whatever.
This has like weird Tommy Haverford vibes.
It's so strange.
What?
But they sold the school.
No!
To a man named Sidney Sheltman.
Who was so confused. Sydney was so confused.
It's so
He's
wild.
like, you own this place? They're like, nah, you do.
Oh, man. It's wild. Now, when the school was abandoned, because it was abandoned at the time, even when he bought it, it became a popular spot for vandals and older boys on marauding expeditions. Now, they tore through the halls and classrooms, took everything out of there. Like, the whole place had been destroyed. In the meantime, the sisters were like, what can we do next? We can woo some older men into marriage.
That's true.
And get some money. They weren't gaining any traction on that front because they
didn't have the looks.
They're a little strange. I feel like their methods might be weird.
Guys love a little.
They love a little.
You know what I'm saying?
That I feel like maybe they were approaching it the wrong way.
They were too. But can I look them up and like see what they look like?
Yeah, I think so. And you can. And I think a lot of like the rumors that were swirling about them were keeping people's distance away from them.
Well, and the fact that like any man in a 5-foot radius of them like weirdly got kerosene doused all over them.
Exactly.
Probably didn't help.
So they had creditors growing impatient, not being paid, and they were going to be taking legal action against them at this point. So the sisters and Fletcher and Ocey began leaving town anytime something like this would happen.
Okay.
So they went off in the direction of New York. And they didn't all go at once. They went one after the other so not to arouse suspicions.
Alrighty.
Now, they were trying to put some space. So Fletcher and Ocey were trying to put space between themselves and their aunts and her mother. So they settled in East Orange, New Jersey in 1908. And by some accounts, they were happy.
I don't want to know about that.
I know.
Ocey is so pretty, though.
I know. I don't know what is happening. It's upsetting.
Oh my God, this rendition of Caroline.
Yes.
No. This just sent me. Stop it. That's why they weren't having luck with the men's, baby. Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. That's so terrifying. Oh my God.
It's
Oh
very,
my God.
There's a lot to unpack.
I'm so upset. Stop it. Virginia's fine.
Up until this point, we've had some tragedies. We've had some deaths that have been very sad and like very scary.
Correct.
But it's about to get real dark.
Okay, let me just breathe.
We got this is all wacky, crazy, but then it gets like, oh. Like all of a sudden you're just gonna go, oh.
Okay.
And it gets like real.
So Ocey and Fletcher are living in Orange, New Jersey. And the aunts are still in the South?
Yes. And they're making their way to New York because they're trying to get away from the creditors that are now after them.
Okay.
But they're doing it like one after the other.
Yeah. Okay, got it.
And again, this is all up until this point, this would just be a wacky, kooky, at times tragic story.
Definitely.
But then now it's just like, oh,
it's about to go down.
And it's still wacky. Like they are wacky humans.
Yeah, you can't take that out of it.
But you can't take the wacky out of them. But but unfortunately, so and again, right. Fletcher and Ocey are first cousins.
You don't have to tell me
I'm going to
keep
reminding you that.
You don't have to.
A few months later, Ocey gave birth to a baby girl. They named
good.
Mary after Fletcher's mom.
And her aunt.
Yep, but the child unfortunately died shortly after she was born.
That's really sad. I'm sure there was some complications.
And things only got worse when Virginia, Mary, and Caroline showed up at Ocey and Fletcher's doorstep in early 1909.
I would say, we don't have anything for you.
They were out of money, and they said, hi, we're here. Their arrival reminded Fletcher of the last time the sisters had found themselves in financial trouble. I don't know if you can remember that time. It coincided with the mysterious and very brutal death of his brother John.
Yes.
And an insurance payout came after that very conveniently for the sisters. And you know what? It solved all their problems at the time.
Sure did.
Yeah. So Fletcher saw this and said, oh, hi.
I'm getting out of here.
Aunties and mom. And said, fuck this. And he fled the country to Canada.
No, he didn't.
In March 1909.
But did he leave Ocey?
He left Ocey.
That's your wife cousin.
It was also that's your wife cousin.
You don't just abandon your wife cousin.
That's your wife cousin.
You don't do that.
Well, and what's sad is that Ocey had not had a chance to tell him that she was pregnant again.
Oh God.
Now, she's abandoned by her husband at this point. Cousin. And left in the care of 3 people who had always treated her like shit.
Oh, they weren't nice to her?
Because they were never nice to her. A lot of people thought that they were jealous of her.
Well, she's
her mother
really
and her aunts were jealous of her.
I bet they were.
They had always kind of treated her like shit. So her mental health began to decline in the spring.
Oh, and she's pregnant.
And her physical needs are increasing because of the pregnancy, which makes it even worse. And to make it even worse, the sisters had taken Ocey out of the comfort of her home that she had with Fletcher and brought her back to Brooklyn to live with them in some like sparsely furnished building.
Oh, and they had like created their own space.
Yeah, and aware that they, luckily they were aware that they lacked any knowledge of or resources to provide any basic level of care for a pregnant woman or really anyone else for that matter because they are wild. The sisters did call a doctor, Dr. William Pettit, who started treating Ocey that spring.
Okay, well, that's good.
Now, Ocey does die, obviously, at the end of this. We've talked about that in the beginning.
I literally forgot that.
After her death later, Dr. Pettit would recall the incredibly strange experience of arriving at the Snead house that spring.
Oh, no.
Now, at the time, only Virginia and Mary were living in the house with Ocey, not her mother, Caroline.
Sus.
But he said at the time, a third woman who he believed to be Ocey's mother would occasionally stop by and check on her.
Yeah.
He said all these women must have slept on the floor, for the only cot in the house on the second floor was occupied by the ailing niece.
Okay.
And he said, aside from meager furnishings in Ocey's room, the house was pretty much empty of anything else.
Damn.
Which only made everything even stranger.
Right. And he's like, you're bringing a baby into this house?
What the fuck?
Like, what are we going to do with the baby?
And Dr. Pettit also found the 3 sisters' behavior really strange and off-putting.
Like, what were they doing?
After he initially evaluated Ocey, who appeared very frail and very depressed.
Oh.
Pettit diagnosed her as suffering from general weakness, the result of lack of nutrition and proper care.
And that's not good because if she's malnourished and the baby is.
So what he had prescribed for her was fresh air, a restorative diet, and medicine.
Okay.
He was like, this will improve her. But upon a follow-up visit, he found that the women had made no effort to provide even one of those things to her.
Oh, no.
When he asked why they hadn't made even the slightest effort to do any of his recommendations, one of the women, he said later he believed it was Virginia, told the doctor they couldn't afford the medicine due to all their money going to the high premiums they were paying in insurance.
What? That doesn't even make any sense.
So during this period, Ocey was dealing with the emotional pain of losing her husband and also losing a daughter.
Yeah.
And the physical pain of a very difficult pregnancy of which she is malnourished and sick.
Oh, man.
And also living with 3 women who are jealous of her and have been her whole life and have treated her like shit.
That's the thing.
And it's for all of these reasons, all those stressors that she's under, that this is why she probably didn't have any idea that after Fletcher left, the sisters had taken out 3 life insurance policies on Ocey with Equitable Life Insurance Society, each in the amount of $7,500.
How did they get 3 out on her?
No idea.
Nobody double checked it? Damn.
I have no idea, but it's wild. Now, a few months later, in late spring, Dr. Pettit became concerned about Ocey's declining health and her ability to even give birth to a baby successfully.
Yeah, because she's so weak at this point.
So Pettit was on hand to guide Ocey through the process of giving birth to her baby in the home. And it was on August 1st, 1909. She gave birth to a baby boy who she named David Pollock Snead.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the labor process was very difficult and the baby was born, quote unquote, sickly. And when Pettit told the 2 aunts that Ocey actually might need a very risky postnatal operation that could prove fatal for her,
no.
He said he was very surprised and very disgusted with how the women reacted. He said they were fairly jumped at the idea.
Because they wanted her to pass, because they wanted to cash in.
Now, despite David, the little baby's poor health at the time of his birth, Dr. Pettit and Ocey were both confident that with the right diet, right care, he would survive and eventually thrive.
That's great.
But that would require the sisters to provide any support that they clearly were not capable of, including spending money on the baby's care. And instead, over the objections of Pettit and Ocey, they, quote, fed the baby condensed milk and other foods at variance with those Dr. Pettit specified.
Oh, my God.
Weeks later, David was still in poor health and was taken to St. Christopher's Hospital by Virginia and Mary, who returned home a short time later to inform Ocey that the baby had died.
Oh.
Though it would later be learned that was a lie.
They just got
and
rid
they
of
had
him.
simply left David at St. Christopher's.
Honestly, in a horrible way, that was probably the best thing for that baby.
But so horrible.
But
to do
for
to
Ocey, that's like, you just kidnapped her baby.
Yeah, and then told her she died.
Like, wow.
Now, in the wake of what she believed was another child's death.
Yeah, she's going to lose it.
Declined mentally, physically. And at his insistence, the sisters allowed Pettit to perform the postnatal surgery on Ocey. But when he attempted to return, a little time later to remove the stitches and do some aftercare, because she managed to get through it.
Wow.
The sisters refused to let him inside the house, but they did allow periodic visits from a nurse.
Okay.
And just a week or so later, Pettit returned to the house when he learned that Virginia had dismissed the nurse, wouldn't allow her back. And his attempts to reach the women went unanswered.
My God. And it's like, I'm like, can you involve the police? Like,
well, yeah. Don't worry, he does.
Okay, good.
Now, because from the moment he had been summoned to treat her in the first place,
what the fuck?
He was very uncomfortable with those 3 women.
Yeah.
And he said they made him feel very unwelcome. Each visit he went to that house, he was more and more unwelcome, more unnerved. And he said it wasn't just like bad attitudes and like weird behavior, which they had,
comments
that troubled him. But he said the fact that the women were intentionally treating Ocey poorly and seemed to care very little whether she lived or died. And on one particular visit, Pettit recalled Virginia showing him Ocey's will.
That's strange.
And in it, Ocey had left the majority of her stuff to her grandmother, leaving aside $1,000 to pay Pettit for his services. So she had put in her will, I want him paid for what he's done for me.
Like, just in case.
Now, the doctor was like, oh, that's far too much for what I've provided. Like, you don't need to give me that much. Like, and also she's alive.
Yeah.
But more importantly, he was like, this is weird and suspicious that you're showing me this. Like, why do you have her will? What are you doing? I don't get it. So he reported the treatment of Ocey and this whole thing to the police.
Good.
And later, he recalled that officers, quote, made a routine inquiry and it led nowhere. And this is also, the police failed on an epic level here. Now, it was his suspicions that led the doctor to take extreme measures upon his last visit to the house. So after knocking and ringing the bell several times and not getting an answer, Dr. Pettit became concerned for Ocey's safety. And he went into the house through an open front window.
I love this man.
I love this doctor.
This man's for the win.
So he reached the girl's bedroom and he said he was shocked to find her, quote, nearly starved with no food in the house. Despite her serious condition, he said that Ocey was so happy to see him and said she wanted to talk to him about something important.
Oh.
But before she could say anything, one of the sisters came in the room and forced Pettit out of the room.
I wish he could have, like, rescued her and taken him with her.
Right? They said they were willing to placate him by being like, fine, we'll have food delivered to the house for her.
Wow.
Like, what the fuck? But they were like, you need to leave now and, like, don't come back or we're calling the police. So he knew, he was like, Ocey's in danger. Like, she's going to die. So he felt, I'm going to report it again. So he reported it to the police again and was like, you need to fucking do something about this.
Seriously.
And he was, so the police went, Brooklyn police, checked on the women, found no evidence of anyone having committed a crime. So they said, there's nothing we can do.
What?
Yeah. Failures.
Huge failure.
Shame. Truly. Like, they should be ashamed of themselves. By fall of 1909, the sisters found themselves, again, needing money. Their regular position in life. With creditors beginning to call on them regularly. And in late October, the sisters were no longer able to hold these creditors off. So they resorted to their typical strategy, you know, picking up and moving before the creditors could find them and get what they needed.
Yeah.
Now, when the doctor learned that the Brooklyn police had been unable to do anything, Dr. Pettit returned to the home again himself.
Hell yeah.
To check on Ocey, because he was going to go in there and he was like, I don't know what I was going to do, but I was going back myself because no one was doing anything. He found it completely abandoned.
Oh, no.
So he didn't know where she went.
That's terrible. And he was probably so worried.
Mm-hmm. Now, on November 29th, 1909, only the next month, police in East Orange, New Jersey, received a call from, quote, an elderly woman with a Southern accent explaining that an accident had occurred at 89 North 14th Street and they needed a coroner.
Huh.
The assistant county physician, Dr. Herbert Simmons, went 3 blocks to the address and he was greeted at the door by Virginia, who was dressed in the typical black attire with the black veil.
They're so weird.
And she let him through the house, and Simmons noted that the building seemed to have no heat or furniture and appeared as though no one had lived there in a long time.
Okay.
They reach the bathroom, and Virginia just points at the bathtub where he sees the nude, emaciated body of Ocey laying beneath just a few inches of water.
Oh, God.
Now, Simmons, this is the county physician, Dr. Simmons, he scanned the scene for any information that might be useful and found a pile of clothing with what appeared to be a very neatly written suicide note attached to it. The note said, last year my little daughter died. Others near and dear have gone before. I have been prostrated with illness for a long time. When you read this, I will have committed suicide. Do not grieve me. Rejoice with me that death brings a blessed relief from pain and suffering greater than I can bear. O.W.M. Snead.
Doubt it.
Now, Virginia explained to the doctor that Ocey had lost her daughter the previous year and her son had been placed in the hospital 4 months earlier. And then she said she had also become a widow 7 months prior. Fletcher didn't die.
Right. Right?
No, not that we know of.
Okay.
So Virginia told the man that she shared the house on 14th Street with her niece, giving the impression that it was just Virginia and Ocey.
Yeah.
And that they had recently moved in. Now, as an agent of the coroner's office, Dr. Simmons had seen a lot of dead bodies and he had seen a lot of scenes. And he said, something's not right here.
Well, the fact that she's emaciated is one thing.
For one thing, Ocey had been dead in the bathroom, in the only bathroom in this place, for at least 24 hours.
So immediately that's sus.
Virginia's saying she just discovered the body.
She just
That's
had an
the only
accident.
bathroom. For 24 hours, there's been a dead body in the bathroom and you didn't know. And there was also the house itself. She's saying that they moved in weeks earlier, but the house was virtually empty. It appeared like no one had been living there for years. So he was very suspicious of Virginia, and he was like, something's up here. So Simmons stopped at the nearest phone he could find and placed a call to Sergeant William O'Neill of the East Orange Police and explained everything that he found, all his thoughts, and noted all his suspicions to them. Now, knowing that Simmons was definitely not the type of man to jump to conclusions, he was a trustworthy guy. He'd been to a lot of these scenes. He wouldn't be bringing them out if he didn't need to. Sergeant O'Neill took this very seriously and immediately went to the house.
Good.
Now, Sergeant O'Neill arrived at the house around 6 p.m., and Virginia opened the door, and she demanded immediately to know what business he had there. And O'Neill explained that he had been ordered to inspect the premises. So Virginia reluctantly let him inside and brought him to the bathroom. And she's like, there she is. Like, showed him Ocey. Now, after reading the note, O'Neill asked Virginia to show him the rest of the house, starting with the attic. Mm-hmm. So going room by room, he was struck by how empty this house felt. And he said, not just empty in the sense, he's like, it was empty. There was nothing in there. But he was like, it felt empty.
Oh,
like there was
like no love, no happiness.
There was a palpable feeling to this house. And in fact, he said the only sign that anyone actually lived there was found in what he assumed to be Ocey's former bedroom. On a small table next to a cot was a locket bearing the photo of a baby on one side and a lock of hair on the other.
That's so sad.
Beside it was a small strip of paper that read lock of David Snead's first hair, August 18th, 2009.
That's the saddest thing ever.
Now, Virginia followed O'Neill quietly from room to room. And she was using like a gas lamp, like if you can just picture
she's
this.
So scary.
Yeah, wearing her full attire with the black veil.
He was probably like, where the fuck
he was probably,
am I?
This is a house of horrors. Now, there were a few pieces of broken furniture or what maybe could have been personal items scattered about, but it looked more like it was like long ago somebody had lived there. And when they'd finished going through the whole thing, O'Neill began to question Virginia about why they'd moved to East Orange. And, you know, why she'd only noticed her niece was dead a few hours earlier when it's the only bathroom in the fucking house. Mm-hmm. So the woman was short with the sergeant and gave him very simple, very direct answers, but also making it very clear that his presence was not fucking wanted in that house. Now, if Virginia thought she could simply call the coroner, be like, hey, sorry, I have a dead body here. Can you go ahead and grab that? And thought she was just going to be done with the whole thing after that.
Which she definitely did.
She must have been pretty surprised when Sergeant O'Neill explained that she was going to have to come with him to the station to answer some more questions. Virginia went. She grabbed a small bag, some belongings, and went out of the house. Now, at the East Orange Police Department, she went through a whole interview, and this time she was interviewed by Police Chief James Bell. Now, to Bell, this was all fucked. This was all suspicious.
Well, she's sitting there in her fucking black veil.
He said that Virginia seemed to have an answer for everything. Yeah. She had a quick answer for everything, but it still didn't explain what happened in the house. Because he was like, she herself was very poised, very polished, but O'Neill had described them living in squalor.
Right.
It just didn't match up. And there was also the manner of the whole thing. Like, if they're claiming this is suicide, how could Ocey have managed to hold herself underwater long enough to drown herself, especially in such a frail and fragile state? And again, your body is going to want to take yourself and sit up.
Yeah.
And she's not strong enough to keep herself underwater. Mm-hmm. So these are all unanswered questions, and they're nagging him. So Bell booked Virginia as a material witness that evening, and she was taken to Essex County Jail.
Ruh-roh.
Now, the following day, November 30th, an autopsy was performed on Ocey, and it confirmed that the cause of death was drowning, but it also raised a few more questions.
Right.
The medical examiner noted that Ocey was emaciated to the last degree, like that of a person suffering from starvation, and she only weighed 80 pounds at the time of her death.
Oh, it's such a haunting picture to think of her being discovered in the bathtub in that state.
Yeah. And in that state, investigators wondered whether she, again, would have had the strength to do this, but also had the strength to write a clear and concise suicide note with a steady hand.
Yeah,
it was very steady. There was no
shakiness to it. There's no way.
No, while the coroner examined the body, investigators with the East Orange police started tracing the two women's movements from the moment they arrived in the city a few weeks earlier.
Right.
They managed to track down a cab driver who'd taken them from the train station to the house, but also took Virginia to see a local doctor by the name of Charles Teeter. When they interviewed Dr. Teeter, he said Virginia had shown up at his house at a late hour on the evening of November 24th.
Okay.
Not long ago, and asked that he accompany her back to the house to provide a health certificate for Ocey.
A health certificate?
Now, although he initially protested, it was clear she wasn't going to take no for an answer, so he agreed to go with her. Now, at the house, the doctor examined Ocey and noted that she was incredibly frail and appeared to have bronchitis. But otherwise, he was like, okay, that's really all I have to say about her. To Bell and O'Neill, the request for the health certificate for Ocey only made Virginia seem more suspicious.
And what is that?
It could be for like insurance reasons.
Okay. It's just like almost like a physical kind of?
Yeah. Now, in just a few days, their investigation had turned up several people who interacted with Virginia in and around East Orange, and always in the context of her asking questions about medical treatment and local doctors, which seemed in keeping with the situation at the house. But when they checked the registers of local hotels in New York City, they were surprised to find that Virginia was staying in several of the city's fanciest hotels in recent months and had been dining at high-end restaurants. So they're like, wait a second. This woman is living in expensive hotels and leaving this emaciated, sick, frail niece alone
in
an
abandoned
empty
house.
Place.
What the fuck?
Shut up, cold, broken house in New Jersey.
And how is she even living in these expensive hotels with no money?
Because she was using the insurance money that she got before. I'm sure she's scamming some shit. There's tons of fraud charges that come up.
Wow.
Eventually, Bell and O'Neill's search led them to a house in Brooklyn that the neighbors had taken to calling the House of Mystery.
They called it this. It reminds me of that TikTok you did with your kids when they're like,
the ball of mystery.
My God.
They called this house the House of Mystery because the three women in black who occupied it were very strange and had a lot of strange behavior. According to the neighbors on both sides of this house, they'd often heard strange noises and banging coming from the house all hours of the night.
What are they doing?
The windows had been blacked out.
Stop it.
And the yard was so overgrown that nobody could see inside.
Like, are they witches?
They're bad witches.
I was going to say
some shit is going down there.
Dark-sided witches.
Dork-sided.
Not
sinister
white
vibe.
witches.
Like, given sinister vibe.
Like white magic.
Yeah, like sinister vibe.
God.
Now, once the investigators had located the janitor responsible for managing the home, because they used to have like certain, like a super almost.
Yeah.
They got inside of it and they found that this place was as bleak and empty as the one in East Orange. And they were about to leave, but then they were approached by a reporter from the New York World who'd been put on the story by one of his New Jersey peers, was like heard all about this.
Because you knew this was going to get reported on.
The reporter is like, wait a second, why are you guys leaving? Don't you notice those small spots of like what looks like blood on the floor by the door?
I love that the reporter was like, hey guys.
Like, hey investigators, did you notice that? So they follow the faint trail through the hall and up the stairs into one of the bedrooms, but it just led nowhere.
What?
Meanwhile, the reporter on the first floor opened the oven in the kitchen and discovered a mass of yellow hair. Wrapped up in its center were two irregularly shaped bones. One resembled a femur, and the other resembled a skull, and they were small.
What?
They said you could see nose bones and the socket of an eye.
Like this is like a child's skull?
It appeared to be.
What the fuck? And obviously this isn't Ocey because we have her body.
Now,
what the fuck is going on?
So they asked the janitor, they're like, what the fuck has been going on in this? Like, what's going on? And the janitor explained that Ocey and her husband had moved into that house about a year and a half earlier and then were joined, remember?
Yeah.
By the two older women always dressed in black. And a few months later, a third woman who was also dressed in black came to live with them, Caroline.
Yeah.
Caroline. The janitor didn't know much else, but he did mention that Ocey's husband eventually left, and the women were constantly behind on the rent. So When Fletcher left, when they showed up, was
Yeah.
like, no, I'm not dying. He left for Canada. They moved into that house and turned it into whatever fucking cult bullshit. While Ocey's living there, they turned it into that.
Okay.
And then they ripped Ocey out of the house, made her live in that abandoned place while they kept living in that house.
Oh, so they didn't live in the house with Ocey in...
They were just keeping her in a house by herself, ailing and sick and unable to move and starving her.
And that was the whole time that she was pregnant.
Yep. And they said and reports had said they had been starving Ocey essentially since she was born.
What?
Like that girl had never been adequately taken care of.
What the fuck?
Yeah. Yep. And so the janitor says when Ocey's husband eventually left, the women were always behind on the rent. And then they would suddenly come into a large sum of money right before they were about to be evicted.
What the fuck?
So they were doing some more shit.
Yeah, they were. And who the fuck is the skull in the oven?
Well, the house in Brooklyn and the information given by the janitor eventually led them to Dr. Pettit,
My guy.
who filled in a lot of the gaps here. And Pettit explained that he had been on hand when Ocey gave birth to her second child. And from that point forward, he said, I just couldn't stop thinking about her. I was so worried for her safety. My concerns grew and grew. And he said, at no time was I able to find out from Mrs. Snead anything about herself, meaning Ocey.
Okay.
He had never found anything about Ocey out from herself.
Well, because they were always lingering.
He said, every time I asked a question, one of the older women was always ready to give up an answer. Mrs. Snead seemed afraid to talk. And he said he tried to follow up several times until one day he arrived at the house in Brooklyn and it was abandoned, which he was presumably when they moved Ocey to East Orange.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Dr. Pettit's nurse, Elizabeth Moog, told a similar story. She said she'd been assigned to care for Ocey after the baby was born and the surgical procedure had been performed.
Yeah.
But she said it was so difficult to take care of her because the sisters were constantly hovering over her. She said, wherever I went, one of them kept tagging after me. I was not alone with Mrs. Snead for a single moment. Mrs. Snead seemed afraid of someone or something.
Oh, and just the air of like her being afraid, being followed by these women.
Yeah.
And then you add on their appearance to it and they're
terrifying.
Just, like black veils and all the
and
time.
And just silently following you.
Oh, I hate it.
Now, Bell and O'Neill explained that what they'd found at the house in Brooklyn. And we're like, what the fuck do you have any idea what that could be? And asked, for Pettit to come with him to look at it. Pettit agreed. And it didn't take long before, they figured out what happened there.
It's not
what happened there, but what that was. Now, according to Dr. Pettit, the stains in the hall, he said he didn't think they were blood.
Okay.
He thought they were tobacco juice. He said probably left by a careless worker.
Oh, okay.
And he's like, that's why there's no end with a crime scene.
Yeah.
The bones in the oven were bizarre, but he said he didn't believe they were human.
Okay.
He thought they were animal bones, but he said, still don't know why they're in the oven.
Yeah.
And there's also like a mass of hair that he was like, I don't know what that is.
Did he think it was human hair? He
couldn't
wasn't
tell.
sure.
He was like, I don't know. But he's like, I think some of these are animals, so I'm assuming they're animal bones. But so Dr. Pettit tried to clear up some mysteries and did a couple, but it didn't stop the New York World News publishing a ton of sensational stories about this.
I mean, how do you not in this fucking
They
case?
called the Brooklyn house a baby farm,
God,
which,
that's
they didn't really have a lot to go on that. They did mention the occult overtones of the whole thing. And thanks to the information provided by neighbors in Brooklyn, and especially that of Dr. Pettit and his nurse, a picture was beginning to emerge for the detectives.
Uh-huh.
It was clear that 3 women had been abusing Ocey, and by all accounts, she seemed terrified of them. But what they couldn't kind of figure out was why they had done this.
Right.
Like, they were like, this is like a long process, and it didn't take them long to figure out a motive. During an interview with William Fee, a Brooklyn attorney, it was revealed that the lawyer had been recommended to Virginia by someone she'd met at church. And she'd summoned him to the house just a few months before Ocey's death.
I can't believe Virginia was at church.
Yeah. Now, according to Fee, Virginia had wanted him to help Ocey write a new will. This was before Ocey died.
Uh-huh.
Virginia produced the old will, completed by Ocey just a few months earlier, and explained they wanted to write a new one because the previous version didn't make any provisions for Ocey's baby.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Ocey's only I think she was only 20, I want to say she was between 23 and 26.
Yeah, and she also was
She's
told
young.
that her baby died, which, like, that is why.
Now, well, Fee thought that the explanation was like, whatever. He's like, okay, that, sure.
Yeah.
But he did think it was strange that the details of the new will were all being dictated by Virginia,
Right.
not Ocey.
Yeah.
Now, according to Fee, on that day, Virginia was in the company of Caroline, Ocey's mother. The girl appeared to be very on the verge of death at the time. And Fee was really moved by the sad story that the sisters were spinning to him.
Right.
So he agreed to write the new will because he thought she's dying.
Yeah.
Like, this is what needs to, this is her mother and her aunts.
Right.
Now, in the new will, Ocey apparently declared that all her debts should be paid out of her estate and that her son should inherit $500.
Okay.
And that the rest was to be left to her grandmother, Martha. That was her original thing.
Yeah.
With new evidence in hand, Chief Bell paid a visit to Virginia in her cell at Essex County Jail and interrogated her about the will. Virginia flatly denied the accusations of neglect and any insinuation that she would conspire to kill her niece for any inheritance.
I mean...
And Bell hoped that the woman would crack when presented with the evidence, but he had underestimated how much she would... He had underestimated her will.
Yeah.
I will say, and you will find out what I mean by that in a minute.
Okay.
He was just about to give up when O'Neill entered his office and presented him with documented evidence and witness testimony confirming medical neglect and all evidence of maltreatment and malnourishment of Ocey.
Yeah.
So all the evidence was there. He didn't need the confession. And he said... Bell said, "At first, I believe Mrs. Snead attempted to take a bath, was discovered in the tub by her murderer, and held underwater until drowned.
Makes sense.
But after careful examination of the evidence, which directly contradicted Virginia's story, he believed Ocey had never intended to take a bath, but had instead been placed in the tub, was too weak to fight back, and was held under a few inches of water by Virginia.
Jesus Christ.
Until she drowned. So she literally carried her, like dragged her into the bath and drowned her.
This is one of the most darkest.
Yeah.
Oh.
Based on the information collected at this point, Bell made the decision to charge Virginia with the murder of Ocey Snead.
Yeah, rightfully so, it sounds.
So the news of Virginia's arrest made readers go crazy all over the East Coast. They had been following all the sensational stories coming out of here. And honestly, the news of her behavior and the way she dressed only made it even more macabre.
Of course.
And law enforcement were talking also about how strange and uncooperative Virginia was being. Police Commissioner Sharp said in a statement to the press, "I tried to question her, but she bluntly told me that she saw no reason why she should answer my questions." And in his assessment of Virginia, Sharp described her as cool, calm, and resourceful and cunning.
Ooh.
Now, in an attempt to get back at the negative portrayals of Virginia, Mary Snead, the other idiot here, granted an interview with several reporters saying family pride should be laid aside and the public should learn the truth about the Sisters in Black.
And tell us.
Mary said, in the hope of lightening the burden of an innocent woman, speaking of Virginia,
doubt it.
I will tell all I know. But hardly... She told
nothing.
She told nothing. In fact, she flat out refused to address any questions regarding the family's financial history and the fact that Virginia had not only taken 3 life insurance policies out on Ocey just before her death, but had also had her will changed.
Right.
She wouldn't talk about any of that. Instead, Mary told some stupid sob story of family tragedy and misfortune that more or less upheld the lies the women had told Ocey, including that her husband was almost certainly dead. Fletcher.
Which he's not. He's just
also
chilling
that's
in
Mary's
Canada.
son.
Yeah.
As for Ocey's death, Mary insisted that it was suicide motivated by profound loss and, her declining health.
I don't know about that.
Now, as news of the story spread, people in New York, New Jersey, Virginia, and Tennessee came forward to tell their tales of the sisters. A former student at the Nashville Female School, where Mary was once employed, described her as being, quote, regarded by all pupils as being queer. Now, like queer
weird.
meaning strange back then.
Yeah.
And in Christiansburg, Virginia, one resident described the sisters as, quote, crazy, eccentric, and exceedingly smart.
Ooh, exceedingly smart in ties with all of that is horrible.
Now, reporters followed every lead in the story, and they began reporting on all the mysterious aspects of the women's lives, including all the things we had talked about before, the weird standing over people's beds at night, the B&Es, the cemetery things, having one driver to bring them to the cemetery all the time.
I forgot that they had a fucking driver to bring them to the cemetery.
And so they started piecing together a story that included a large amount of fraud, very disturbing behavior, and a few suspicious deaths, and a lot of insurance shit.
Mm-hmm.
There was the tragic death of Caroline's first child after falling down a flight of stairs.
Yup.
The unexpected early death of Robert Martin, her husband. John Snead's multiple brushes with death before dying by being lit on fire in his bed.
I know. Did the police ever, investigate that?
No, they said, in fact, they could smell kerosene, and nobody thought it was suspicious.
What the
They said it was an accident. And then finally, Ocey's drowning. All of these things were followed by large insurance payouts that were received just in the nick of time to avoid financial ruin.
Right.
So in an effort to combat the growing amount of strange stories in the press, Virginia's lawyer, Franklin Fort, presented the press with 2 unmailed letters that Virginia supposedly had written to family members.
Okay.
In each letter, Virginia is expressing her deepest sympathies for the recent losses. There were statements like, what a flood tide of loving sympathy slows to you this beautiful Sabbath afternoon. And I would love to hold you, dear head, on my lap and run my fingers through your hair and so charm away brain worry. Brain worry.
Brain worry.
Like, people talked so wild back then.
How about just feeding her?
Yeah, there's always that. Fort's intention was to demonstrate that Virginia was far from this bizarre spinster she had been portrayed as the press, and that no woman who writes such letters would commit murder.
Totally.
Totally. Wow. Now, despite, what seemed like a rock solid way to influence the press, the public perception of Virginia, Fort simply couldn't hold back the constant sensational news coverage because she was weird.
Wild.
Moreover, the more the press learned about the family through their investigations and the police, the more it began to look as though Virginia was not the only one involved in all this.
Yeah, I'm also like, where the fuck is Caroline? Because Mary's out here talking to the press. Where's Caroline about her only child now dying?
So as the new year rolls over, the prosecutor's office had begun to put together a theory as to the events leading up to and resulting in Ocey's death. They believe that all 4 women had been living in the house in Brooklyn when they concocted a scheme to kill Ocey and collect on the insurance money.
Yeah.
Now, according to the prosecutor, one old woman hired the unfurnished house in East Orange. Another took the poor girl there, and a third planned her murder. So they rented that house in East Orange, brought Ocey there and left her there, let her starve there for a while, and planned her entire murder. And then told the police, we are living here together, even though they're not. Now, by dividing up the tasks, because one of them hired the house, one of them brought her there, one of them planned the murder. By dividing up those tasks, the women had hoped to avoid suspicion.
Yeah.
And I don't know why they would have gone through all the lengths when they could, to bring her to East Orange, when they could have just committed this crime in New York.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I wonder if they thought maybe her traveling in such a frail state would just end up with her death.
Maybe.
But
it's even then, it's that would have been great for them.
Oh, yeah, actually, yeah.
That either way. So it's it just doesn't make it, why wouldn't you just, do it?
Yeah.
Why'd you bring her somewhere else and, involve another place and,
Oh, wait, no, that's what I meant by that. I think
you meant going from Brooklyn to East Orange.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was thinking the other way around.
No, that's
You
okay.
are correct. That is also a good point. But even investigators now, they're I still don't get why they didn't just, because you didn't really need anything to happen. You had already done the starvation and the poor treatment and the withholding medical treatment from her.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, it's it looks like what they did was they just dragged her to a bathtub and drowned her. They could have done that.
They could have done that all along, but maybe the financial thing was heating up at that point. Maybe they were okay, she's not going to die soon enough from starvation, so we need to speed this along.
But that's what I mean. They could have just drowned her in the house that they already had.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
I don't know.
But what's also unknown to investigators at this point was the whereabouts of, you were asking, Caroline.
Yeah, where is she?
They believe she was obviously an active participant in her own daughter's death.
I mean, yeah.
Now, despite her absence, or perhaps because of it, the press was able to paint a picture of Caroline as a kind of ringleader among the sisters.
It sounds like she is, because again, they were quote unquote normal before.
Until her arrival, the sisters' lives seemed pretty functional. Odd a little bit, but functional.
Yeah, I mean, she was the president of the school. The other one worked there.
But once Caroline entered the picture, her manipulation and overbearing personality completely changed Virginia and Mary. According to Luann Rife, the newspapers described Caroline as an intelligent and highly emotional woman, perhaps with mental illness, who manipulated her family.
Yeah.
She was a hoarder. She clung on to everything she owned rather than sell them, even when she was financially desperate. And most importantly, she lacked any real human connection. Even with the closest members of her family, her husband, her son, and her daughter, she had no connection to them.
It sounds like she has more of a connection to her sisters.
Yeah. And this was a strange little thing. By mid-December, Caroline had been located in New York City, and she was registered at a hotel as Mrs. Maybrick.
Mrs. Maybrick.
Now, remember the case of Florence Maybrick?
Yeah.
James Maybrick?
Yeah.
Who some people believe to be Jack the Ripper. He's not. Get this. Florence Maybrick's daughter was named Caroline.
Wait, what?
So Caroline, our bad Caroline, is living in New York City in a hotel under the name Mrs. Maybrick. Florence Maybrick was married to James Maybrick and was accused of poisoning him.
Uh-huh.
Her daughter's name was Caroline.
Okay.
I don't know what the connection is there, but Mrs. Maybrick is a strange name to pick.
Yeah.
And the fact that the Caroline is going under Mrs. Maybrick and the real Mrs. Maybrick has a daughter named Caroline is a little strange.
That is. And it was heavily reported, even in this.
Yeah. Like, people thought he was Jack the Ripper.
Right. What the fuck?
And it was like a big deal because they thought that Florence had murdered him.
Right. And sorry, was that in the States or no? Because they thought he was Jack the Ripper. So that was in Europe. And it was reported over here because, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was like a lot. What?
Yeah. Like, it's just a weird, I was like, what is this? And I tried to find any other kind of connections there, but I was like, I couldn't find. And though it's weird too, is I think it was a big deal, the Florence Maybrick stuff, because Florence Maybrick was from Alabama.
Oh, and they're from
so she's
the South
from
as
the
well.
South. And it's like, so that was definitely reported over here because it was like an American woman,
right.
You know? But yeah, like that's.
Fuck.
There's also a weird interconnection here that I can't quite put my finger on, but weird, very like coincidental.
Yeah, and it's also if she did do that on purpose, which to me it kind of sounds like she did. That's a weird fucking thing to do on purpose because people are gonna want to you're trying to float below the radar, but you're picking that as a cover name.
Yeah, I don't know
what.
It's very strange.
Do you think she just thought it was like
funny?
Yeah,
or she just did it to be like. I don't know. Because they love that spooky persona. They've got
maybe it was just like
their black dress with the black veil.
Right.
So maybe it's just part of the whole,
sounds very mental illness.
Very strange.
You know, it sounds like she was there. There's definitely something.
Well, and when I saw Mrs. Maybrick, I was like, Mrs. Maybrick. And I was like, oh, Florence Maybrick, James Maybrick. And I started thinking about it. And then I was like, huh. And I was like, wait, Florence was from the United States. I was like, wait, she was from the South.
Yeah.
Wait a second. And I started looking into it again, just being refreshing. And then I was like, holy shit, her daughter's name was Caroline.
I feel like that's too weird to be a coincidence.
Right?
I think, yeah.
Too many connections there. But anyway, that was my little sidetrack.
Florence ended up getting out of jail eventually and then moving back to the States, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she ended up living like
a quaint life.
A pretty quiet life.
Yeah. Interesting.
Now, Caroline was under surveillance by New Jersey authorities until they had justification to arrest her.
We love a surveillance moment.
Right. That evidence finally came in the form of several letters written by Caroline that Chief Bell believed bore a remarkable resemblance to the handwriting in Ocey's suicide note.
She wrote her
own
daughter's
child's fake
suicide note.
Finally, by the end of December, Mary, Snead, and Caroline were taken into custody by New York authorities and held for the murder of Ocey.
Wow.
On December 22nd, a grand jury indicted all 3 women for first-degree murder. At this time, prosecutor Wilbur Mott began drawing up the papers to have Mary and Caroline extradited to New Jersey to stand trial. The most compelling piece of evidence presented to the grand jury, according to the press, was more than 50 quote-unquote suicide notes discovered in Caroline Martin's New York hotel room.
So she kept writing them over and over and
she
over
was practicing.
Again? What the fuck? That's her daughter.
Her child.
I mean, she was already starving her, so I don't know. I'm shocked, but whoa,
still.
That's fucked.
Now, while all 3 women continued to be held in prison pending trial, investigators in East Orange kept turning up evidence in the case that strongly supported the theory that Ocey's death was a murder. In addition to the insurance policies taken out on her life and other evidence of conspiracy, when he first searched the house, Sergeant O'Neill had found a glass by the bathtub that contained a small amount of liquid. When the autopsy was conducted, a small amount of that same liquid was discovered in Ocey's stomach. Now, it took a long time for the analysis to be completed, but in mid-January, the results came back and found that that liquid was morphine.
Oh.
The discovery of the morphine answered the nagging question of how Ocey had managed to drown in such a shallow amount of water.
Right.
Especially since the body would instinctively fight to stay alive. With this news, so they had sedated her, because that's easy.
And that was probably how they even got her into the bath in the first place.
Now, with this new evidence, the prosecutor announced their belief that the women had been administering the morphine for several days, and that when she was put in the bathtub, Ocey was unconscious of what was occurring, which I guess is the only blessing here, that she didn't know what was happening. Now, they built their case against the 3 sisters, and the prosecutor announced the trial would begin April 1910, but things started to fall apart because a ton of things delayed the trial. First, the sisters' elderly mother died, followed by the unfortunate death of Ocey's son David at St. Christopher's Hospital. Then, in the spring, it became clear to authorities that Virginia's health had started to take a turn for the worse.
And she's in custody, right? Okay.
They discovered she was starving herself.
What? That is so, just
dark.
Macabre.
Yep. In August, the prosecutor announced it is feared Virginia Wardlaw may not live to be brought to trial.
Wow.
By the summer, she had been removed from the House of Corrections and taken to a hospital. She was frequently unconscious, required oxygen, and a few days later, on August 12th, she had died from starvation.
Jesus.
She had starved herself to death in custody.
That is wild, because that takes a long time.
Yeah. Now, prison officials had tried to give her enough food. They were serving her food. She just wouldn't eat. And they said she had intentionally killed herself. And they said, quote, having starved herself to avoid being placed on trial.
Wow.
Now, things became even more complicated a month later in late September when Franklin Fort produced a document signed by 2 psychiatrists that declared Caroline Martin insane.
I mean, we knew that.
He said the defense argued this is a case of whether a woman should be confined in a jail or in an asylum. We have carefully considered all the details of the case, and with the relatives of Mrs. Martin, believe that she is not now in her right mind. The request for a new hearing on Caroline's sanity conflicted with the schedule for the acting judge, so the case was transferred to another judge, Judge J. Ten Eck, and scheduled for early August. Now, when it finally went underway, Caroline's behavior, whether real or an act to bolster this claim, because people do believe it was, did little to contradict the ways in which she'd been portrayed in the press. At one point, while a former representative from Wardlaw College was testifying about how Caroline had negatively affected the school and its finances, Caroline jumped out of her seat and shouted, "I never said a thing he is telling," and then was ordered to sit down by the courtroom.
Yeah.
Caroline would continue to have outbursts over and over. She would challenge any and all testimony given. And when Caroline's brother, Reverend Albert Wardlaw, was called to the stand, he testified that Caroline had always been controlling, manipulative, and strange.
We heard that.
He said, she directed both my school and daily life in New York. He said of his earlier experience with his sister that he said that he told the court that around 1890 or 1891, he noticed a marked change in his sister's behavior. She was irrational, bizarre, and very quick to anger. And at one point, she said to him that she was, quote, equal to her creator and called herself Salvatore.
What?
Albert Wardlaw's testimony was interrupted again by Caroline outbursting, and the judge had to call a recess. Now, throughout the trial, Caroline was seen to lift her veil a lot because she was wearing her veil. Mm-hmm. And basically, she would like lift her veil subtly during one of her outbursts to kind of evaluate the judge's reaction, gauging how far she could carry it or to act out. Like, this is very clear that she's doing it on purpose. Like, she would look at him and be like, and like see how far she could take it. And after multiple outbursts in the courtroom, the sanity hearing finally concluded in late November. And the judge concluded Mrs. Martin is sane within the meaning of the statute, competent to advise counsel and assist in the preparation of defense.
That's the thing. If you can sit there and jump up and outburst to everything.
And be like looking to see how far you can take it.
Then hello.
So without a formal declaration of insanity to shield her, Caroline's lawyers encouraged her to plead guilty to a lesser charge.
Smart.
And on November 9th, 1911, she pleaded no contest to a charge of manslaughter. But when the plea agreement for manslaughter was read in court, she interrupted the prosecutor and said, involuntary manslaughter, please, sir.
You can't just change the charge that you're pleading to.
And the prosecutor raised his voice and said, manslaughter, madam. So the exchange brought on another aggressive outburst from Caroline, but the judge had fucking enough of this and was like, we're going to get delayed again. So he literally like yelled at Carolyn, this is not the time for you to talk. Oh. And she just slinked back in her chair.
Oh, man.
Now, Caroline Martin was sentenced to 7 years in the state penitentiary for women and began serving her term February 8th, 1911.
7 years?
After a little more than a year in prison, officials noted that Caroline was doing very poorly and her mental health had declined considerably. So in May 1912, she was declared insane and transferred to the New Jersey State Hospital for the Insane to finish out her sentence.
Okay.
On June 10th, 1913, only the next year, Caroline Martin died from heart disease at the age of 67.
Wow.
Now, because the law didn't allow for co-conspirators to manslaughter, the joint indictment of Caroline and Mary had to be severed. As a result, the prosecutor had to drop the accessory charge against Mary Snead, and she was free to go.
She just walked.
With her husband and one of her sons dead, and Fletcher living in Canada, Mary's only option was to move to Colorado, where she went to live with a third son that no one knew about.
What the fuck?
Mary resurfaced in 1930 when a number of diamonds were discovered in an unclaimed bank vault in Murfreesboro, Tennessee.
This would be the way that this fucking thing
now,
ends.
According to Mary, quote, Miss Virginia Wardlaw, Virginia.
Yeah, her sister.
Miss Virginia Wardlaw's diamonds were lost or stolen from Sewell College, and she believed them to be the same diamonds found in the vault.
No.
As the only living sister, Mary claimed herself the heir to her sister's estate.
Those aren't hers.
And attempted to claim the diamonds.
No, baby, no.
It's unclear whether she was successful.
Really?
At the time, she was known to be, quote, a church worker living in Oakland, California. Mary Snead died in 1937.
Wow, 1937. That's
And
something.
that's the end of the story.
What the fucking fuck, dude? That is, first of all, one of the darkest tales that you've ever told. And I shouldn't say tales because it's true. And secondly, what the fucking fuck?
What the fucking fuck is right?
Holy shit. That's one of the strangest.
The fact that Ocey was wrapped up in this.
I know, because it sounds like she was
so
just like
sad.
a sweet girl.
Yeah, and she just wanted like a happy, normal life.
It pisses me off that Fletcher was like, oh, I'm not going to die. Like, let me get out of here.
Yeah, it's like, fuck you, Fletcher.
Take her with you.
Yeah, like, Jesus, like, goddamn, like, you had to get married. You agreed to get married.
Yeah, you must have loved
and
her
also,
in some capacity.
It's your first cousin. Get her out of there. Like,
right.
Jesus. If you're worried about these women and what they did to your brother, you should be worried about what's going to happen to your family member.
Exactly.
You know?
Wow.
He just runs up to Canada. I'm like, nice, Fletcher.
That's the thing. It's like, take her to Canada with you. Jesus
That feels
Christ.
very much like a Fletcher thing to do, though. I know you like that name, but like, it feels like a Fletcher thing to do.
You're not wrong.
You know?
I think that's the guy's name in like Something Borrowed who like cheats on his woman.
Oh my, I think you might be right.
Yeah, I'm not going to name my kid Fletcher. Sorry to all the Fletchers.
Sorry to all the Fletcher. It's a cool name.
It is
not
cool
going to
name.
lie. But I don't know. Something about it.
Fletch.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that is the story of
holy bananas.
The quote unquote Black Sisters, because that's what they were called,
right.
and the murder of Ocey Snead.
That I just can't even stop saying how wild that was.
Yeah.
I've never heard anything like that.
Took me out, my friend.
For real. Mikey just like found that in the
Mikey just found it and was like, you should look at this story. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah,
where the hell did this come
from? Written all over.
How did I miss this? I was like, I've never came across this.
That's wild.
Crazy.
Just had a driver to fucking. Yeah. You want to do that when we're old? Let's hire a driver.
Drive us to the graveyard.
We won't dance around like headstones though. That's fucked up.
No, it's kind of disrespectful.
That's super disrespectful. You know? He can drive us somewhere else.
I do love a graveyard though. I love to walk around a graveyard.
Let's dress in all black when we're older. Not murder anybody. Just get a 4 for 4 at Wendy's.
A 4 for 4.
I know.
Bringing it back.
There's a lot of souls happening today. I had a weird accent on my fall there.
Fall.
Earlier I said insanity.
She did.
I don't know.
Well,
we hope you keep listening. Holy
and
fuck.
we hope you
keep.
It's
weird. But not so weird that you hire a driver to bring you to the cemetery in the middle of the night and you dance around graves and then you like wake up in the middle of the night to people standing over your bed, and not so weird that you kill your own daughter by starvation and then write all the suicide notes for her because wow, that's like super fucked up.